Democrats aren't left, which is why I don't like using the word progressive anymore. I feel like that's been co-opted. And so I now just say that I'm the actual left. I'm just an actual leftist. I mean, like, I believe in labor. I tend to believe in communal and socialism. And like, I'm an actual leftist, but we don't have that in our politics here.
No, we don't. But in that vein, I do want to say something, okay? And I'm resorting to a tweet that, actually, I did. I don't know if I did tweet it. I've been sending this text around, and you would have gotten it, but I don't actually have your phone number, okay?
Oh, I'll give you my phone number.
Okay,
my phone number.
Yeah, so I've been sending this by text. I've been sending it by text to every one of my comrades and colleagues. Here's what I'm saying. I don't think people realize what the GOP appeal is driven by. 45 to 50 years of democratic neoliberalism and identity politics, meaning the abandonment of working people, white, black, and brown. Consider the fact it has not reduced popular desire for social democracy. Americans want exactly what they've always wanted. They want, even if they don't use the term and we don't hear it, they want social democracy. But what's happened over the course of all these decades of this is the Democrats have been so abysmal, they have literally intensified the hatred for them. People hate the Democrats.
Yes.
I mean, I honestly believe that all these folks who turn out to vote Republican, they on the one hand, sure, every poll, every indicator says these are the things Americans want, and then they vote, and people say, well, they're voting against their interests. No, they're voting for the pleasure of screwing the Democrats who have screwed them. Look, the Republicans are who they are. The Democrats are not who they are, not who they're supposed to be.
Okay. Right. Well, we don't have a Labor Party. I mean, it's just kind of silly, right? I mean, Max, what are your thoughts on anything? I mean, I know that you probably do participate in electoral politics, but I know that that's not your focus.
Correct. It's I think that, and I don't even particularly like the framing of harm reduction, right? I mean, I think that we need to understand that the struggle is, being fought on many fronts, right? The electoral realm is one of them. The problem is that for so long, so many of us were taught and became convinced that it was the only front of the struggle for democracy, for our rights, for the advancement of working people and our collective interests in this country. And I think that we have seen, like the fallacy of believing that the electoral realm is the only realm where political struggle happens and where political change can be made. I mean, that is inevitable when you go so long without seeing the kind of change that working people are demanding, even if those changes are radically popular. To Harvey's point, you could have massively popular policy decisions that are just not, in sync with the interests of the party proper down the road in DC. And you can only go so long with that disconnect kind of every election cycle before people check out from the process altogether. Maybe they, out of desperation or out of vitriol, like Harvey says, for their neighbors, for the people online that they hate, for the people on their TV that they hate, they may, develop a political sensibility through that route. But the point being is that elections are, part of what set the conditions for the rest of our political struggles. Right. I mean, like these are, in Illinois right now, people have been voting on whether or not to codify collective bargaining rights in the state constitution. Right. So, hell yeah, I think people should, participate in elections. As the editor in chief of a nonprofit news network, I am not allowed to tell people who they should vote for or anything like that. But I think that when you have something like that on the ballot, it's probably important to participate in the process, but don't make that the whole thing. On a couple hundred miles down the road in Tennessee, they're trying to codify right to work in their state constitution. And it's just like,
Mhm.
you know, so these things do matter. It's really up to every individual person to determine, you know, like the extent to which they're going to participate. But we can't pretend that they don't matter. We can't pretend that they don't shape the terrain upon which our other political struggles are being fought. But I think you are absolutely right, Jen, and hit the nail on the head that you know, this was something that a lot of us were saying last year when, you know, we had an uptick in strikes, in unionization efforts and petitions filed for unionization. You know, we're still seeing a lot of that. Now the kind of inflation squeeze is you know, playing into that in interesting ways that I won't go into just yet. But anyway, the point is that everyone kept pointing to the fact of how popular unions were, how much support, you know, unions had in the general public, which was great. But as a number of us said, and I believe it was Tony Gilpin, the historian, who kind of wrote this, is that unions don't need to be liked; they need to be feared, right? I mean, they working people need to develop their own independent engines for expressing our interests as a class. You know, and asserting those interests and pushing them on the list of priorities in state houses and in Washington, D.C. And in order for that to happen, we have to build a critical mass of a constituency that actually has the kind of teeth that the labor movement used to have in this country, right? Where you actually had the parties fighting over endorsements because they knew how powerful, you know, voting blocks in the labor movement were and how educated folks were on the ways that policy shaped, you know, their industries, their jobs, their pensions, so on and so forth. So we don't need a labor movement that is, you know, just an extension of the Democratic Party. We don't need, we need a labor movement that makes, you know, like politicians actually feel like they have to listen to this constituency, and we have to fight and we have to hold people's feet to the fire. This was, if I can say one more thing and then I'll shut up. I just had recorded a great interview yesterday that will run on my podcast hopefully next week. With a trade unionist and retired subway engineer in Brazil. And I talked to him about, you know, yeah. So I talked to him about the role that the labor movement and the working class kind of played in the recent elections where Lula was reelected and Bolsonaro was voted out. And so we had a great discussion about that, but he said very much the same thing. He's like, look, yeah, it's great that Lula's in, but Lula's not going to like do everything for us. And in fact, there are people in his cabinet that we're concerned about. And so we need a robust labor movement to push this government in the direction that it needs to go for us, the working class. I think that that is very much the mindset we have to have here, because Biden can go out there and continuously say he is the most pro-union president in American history. And granted, he's been more nominally pro-union than any president in my lifetime. But at the same time, you know, I've been covering the crisis on the nation's freight railroad system all year. I've interviewed a lot of railroad workers before and after, you know, the threat of a national rail shutdown in September. You know, one of the reasons that the rail union said we got to push this to make Biden appoint a presidential emergency board to try to broker a deal between the rail unions and the rail carriers, the thinking was, well, this is the most pro-labor president, you know, that we've ever seen. We have a Democratic Congress. Hopefully that will play into our favor. And then what happened in August, Biden's hand-selected presidential emergency board came out with its recommendations that just basically threw money at workers, didn't address any of the quality of life issues, any of the issues that have led the rail carriers to totally, you know, price gouge and destroy our supply chain, run workers into the ground, yada, yada, yada. Now, Biden's Secretary of Labor, Marty Walsh, just came out and said that if the unions refuse this deal, Congress needs to step in and force them into a contract and force them back to work. Like, I mean, this is why, again, you can't just put your faith in a party that tells you it has your best interests at heart and then just say, and then accept whatever they give you. Like, you need an independent working class pushing hard at every turn.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.